So here's a little bit of my story. I grew up in Eugene, kind of on the liberal end of town. Most of my teachers were like ex-hippies and were opinionated in the classroom. Even all the way back to grade school, I got a lot of really good political theory and social theory growing up, to put it nicely. And a lot of that was very anti-established religion. So I've never really known living in what they call a Christian bubble. Like, that's not been my experience. But my parents went to a conservative Christian church. And so kind of grew up kind of bantering around these two sides. And in light of that, coupled with my personality, which is a fairly critical mind, and I would say a fairly naturally rebellious personality, though I don't necessarily rebel societally, but it's like if I have a thought, I run with it, you know. I don't care what those around me think about it. In light of that, I've had a real struggle spiritually in my journey, just because questions really bother me. And if something doesn't have congruence to it, meaning the answers that people provide, if it doesn't really sound like it works, or I don't see it playing out in life and communities in the world in a way that makes sense, I basically want to go, well, that's just kind of BS. Like, let's not live pretend. I don't think faith is pretend. I just don't. Went to college at Oregon State University, graduated when I was 21, moved to Eastern Europe. I lived in Albania right after the wall fell. So that was really a wild time of seeing a society rebuilding itself, but also rebirthing faith after 50 years of really strict atheistic communism, and a country that was historically Muslim. So it was all like Islam that was rushing back into this vacuum, and then I was right in the middle of it as literally one of the first non-Albanians to live in Albania in over 50 years. So it was a very wild experience. After that, I lived in Yugoslavia during the war, which was challenging since our government was doing all the bombing. So it made Slavs not really happy that we were around, and that made for an interesting life, but also a really dynamic life. I've spent time in Southeast Asia. I've spent quite a bit of time in the Middle East. Basically, all my 20s were spent overseas doing different kinds of ministry and relief work of different kinds. I'm a very, very strong proponent of the Jesus way. I actually really believe in Jesus. And I would say I've encountered Jesus multiple times in my life where he has been very near and very tender to me. And in light of that, he has my full devotion. Came back to the States 10 years ago. Very surprised. I never thought I would live in America again. I met a girl, which always gets you in trouble. It took us 8 months from first date to marriage, and we started making babies pretty quickly, and so we have 3 darling little boys that several of you know. And I've spent the last 6 years trying to keep a business afloat, where we were basically doing loans, mortgage loans, to pay the bills so that we could do economic justice work and community development. And it really sounded like a cool idea, but basically that means 6 years of not being able to pay your bills, essentially what that means. I spent a good chunk of time at Reed College as a chaplain. I spent a good chunk of time at Lewis and Clark as a chaplain. And now I'm involved in several different just kinds of community development, Christian work in kind of the West Coast, mostly the Pacific Northwest, which is it's the most post-Christian area of the country. So that's a little my story. So now this time is for you.